Well, hello, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. I'm, as always, so happy that you are hanging out with me today for a little bit. We're going to be talking about how to avoid covert manipulation and control, because this can be very sneaky. And a lot of us already walk around with a lot of guilt. We don't feel like we're doing enough, those of you who are perfectionists, and we can believe someone else's lies about us or our behavior, and that is a very painful cycle to get stuck in. So I've created a little downloadable guide for you. All you have to do to get it is go to terricole.com/282, because this is the 282nd episode of The Terri Cole Show. I know you can't believe it, or maybe just I can't believe it. This is a topic that comes up quite a bit, though, when people send me emails trying to see if they can trust their own reality and how they think they're being in the world and in their relationship, and feeling bad. So let's talk about some of the most common, the favorite manipulation tactics of people who use this, and also understand that someone who is covertly manipulating you or attempting to, they're trying to get their own needs met, but in a way that is dysfunctional and in a way that is damaging to you. So the whole cycle itself is dysfunctional. I think we can all agree with that. But I want you to be aware of the tactics, because this is something that people who do this a lot, covert manipulators, and even people who are directly controlling, they get very good at their game. And if you can become aware of the behaviors, it makes it so much easier to not get caught up in it and to not be constantly beating yourself up or feeling like you're not doing enough. So let's look at what are the most common ways. So guilt is one. Making you feel guilty for not fulfilling their need, not doing the thing that they want you to do. Complaining, right? Just complaining to you. And if you are a codependent, if you are someone who feels overly responsible for the people in your life, somebody complaining can literally trigger an action in you. You feel like you need to do something to make it better for them. So complaining can seem very benign, and it can be, but we're going to be looking at the overall pattern of behavior of what you experience in this relationship, because someone complaining does not mean that they are trying to covertly control you, but along with a bunch of other of these behaviors, then you see a pattern of control happening or an attempt to do so. Flattery. So flattery can also be something, especially if it's someone you don't know well. I find this in the beginning of relationships, and a lot of people use this day to day. They flatter people to get on their good side, to make you feel good about yourself. But if it is someone who's trying to use it to control you, the flattery comes and it's almost like they're buttering you up for their next request, what they want you to do for them, so you'll see it's like a 1-2 punch with the flattery. So somebody giving you a legitimate compliment really isn't the same thing as flattery. And you know the feeling of someone flattering you. I imagine I can always tell when someone is flattering me for a manipulative reason, because usually then the second punch comes in and they ask for something, they imply I owe them something, So think about that in your own life. There's also blaming as a manipulation tactic. So they're upset about something, they're blaming you for the way that they're feeling, and then kind of suggesting the corrective action you can take so that they feel better. But you have to get to the beginning of that tactic, is that if you know that you are not responsible, if you didn't do the thing that they're saying, if you didn't mean what you said the way that they are perceiving it, that you really have to be able to be solid within yourself to not fall for it. And it's really challenging, but you have to understand someone feeling a particular way and them saying, I feel that way because of you, isn't necessarily true, even if they truly believe it, because they are responsible for their side of the street and you are responsible for your side of the street. Other tactics include straight up lying. Someone who literally just has either revisionist history is kind of a nicer way of saying it, but it's really the same thing, where you say, oh, we talked about this and you agreed, and they will to your face say, we never talked about that. I never agreed. I mean, you brought it up, but I didn't say I would do it, even if they did. So that is one. What is difficult with covert manipulation tactics is that they're really hard to put your finger on. And if it's a she said, or a he said, she said, or whatever it is, you can't really prove what happened. But again, that now falls into the category of gaslighting, which of course is a huge, a very well-known manipulation tactic. But that's very severe as well. So it's not the more average garden variety of manipulation. Gaslighting, and I have a whole episode on gaslighting and how you can recognize it, but this is a tactic a lot of times that's employed by a narcissist or someone with one of the cluster B personality disorders, where they are really getting you off your game. They are really denying your reality. And it doesn't mean that the person doing it is fully aware of it. With all of these tactics, a lot of times the person is unaware, but that doesn't change our responsibility to ourselves, that we don't want anyone covertly or overtly controlling us, because that really is not what happens in a healthy relationship, whether it's a friendship, a family relationship, or a love relationship, right? We each need to be self-determined in those relationships. And if you had childhood experiences with having very controlling, authoritarian parental impactors or family system, there are certain things in our childhood that can make us more vulnerable to ending up with people like this in our life in adulthood. So as always, and in the little downloadable guide, I'll give you a couple of powerful questions that you can ask yourself to try to determine, do you have a history of this? And that sets the stage. And if you know my work, I talk quite a bit about repeating relationship realities, where we just continue to repeat either what we saw or what we experienced, even if we didn't like it, right? Even if it was painful, unless there's some kind of a pattern interrupt, there's some kind of education, there's some kind of realization that you have, and then you decide that it's going to change. But of course, that's something that you have to do for yourself, because someone who is trying to control you doesn't, or is successfully controlling you covertly, they don't want you to change, right? Because they are getting their needs met in this dysfunctional way. Another tactic is bribery, where you see this within family systems quite a bit. Families of means, a lot of times, there will be financial support to adult children, but there are conditions that comes along with that support. Sometimes we'll continue to give you access to all this money, but you must come into the family business. You must work with us. You must keep this thing going. Or lots of other types of stipulations on the money. And money in particular is really complicated, right? The same way that we have downloaded blueprints that I talk about for all these other areas of life, your love blueprint, your boundary blueprint, we also have money blueprints, the way we perceive it. And I can tell you, in every family system, money is never just money. In every relationship, money is never just money. It doesn't mean that you can't relate to money and finances in a healthy way. You can, but especially within family systems, some families reward with money, even if you were going through school and got good grades. This was something in my family, and I'm not talking about a lot of money, but there would be some kind of it's almost like a bonus, where my parents would give us, $20 if we did well in school, right? When the grades came out. Now, I'm not saying that is, that's reward and punishment type thing, which, you want to reinforce the positive behaviors, you want to discourage the negative behaviors. But it really is, when we get down to what it actually is, that is still kind of a form of bribery, although I don't think it's a super dangerous form when you're only talking about a small amount of money. But there's something to be said if you are an adult and you have a parent or a grandparent who is promising you money or threatening to withhold lots of money if you don't behave or choose a spouse or choose a career that they approve of. So it really can be a lever to be used against you. And I know that there are different cultures within different families, of course, around money. And there are some long-standing cultures, I imagine, in families who have extreme wealth of how that wealth gets passed down. There's a healthy way to do it, and then there is a manipulative way to do it. So I think that's something to really think about, because it can be very tempting. But do you want to be controlled forever by your parents or your grandparents? It really impedes the process of being fully self-determined. Because how can you be fully self-determined if your financial wellness is dependent on other people who want you to fulfill their needs, whatever that may be? And a lot of times it's as simple as a family vacation. And I think that's also can be less damaging, right? Because you can still choose to not go on a family vacation. But if I knew I had a client who came from a wealthy family and was really struggling to break away from the control. Because when she first came into my practice, she was complaining about feeling so controlled by the money. And I was like, listen, you have a choice though. You have a job. You could live within your means like regular people do, or more middle-class folks or folks that don't come from family money. It's possible because she had a good job. She was successful. She was in PR. But she didn't actually initially want to give up the lifestyle because she was definitely living well above her means. So I think that there is something you really got to think about. What is the cost? And after a couple of years in therapy, she decided that the cost was too high. And by that point, she had saved some of her own money and was able to not be manipulated by her family by just saying, I don't need a monthly quote unquote allowance from you. I'm 34 years old and I can do it myself. In my own family system, my father, although I was not raised wealthy in any, was very middle class, I would say, but my father definitely rewarded with money, and partly because he was emotionally unavailable. And so I knew when I was going back to grad school, once, I'd already had a career and I'd been on my own since I was 18, or no, when I got out of college, so 21, I guess, that I saw the way that he used money to, I always felt like it was an emotional payoff. If I give you this money, then don't expect me to be super present for you. Or like I'm checking off the box. So when I was going back to grad school, he was like, I want to help you because I actually didn't really save the right amount of money. I just figured I would figure it out, which I did. So I worked quite a bit during grad school. And all of the time, once I got out of college, unless it was a Christmas gift or something like that, I refused to accept money from my father because I knew if I allowed him to sort of love me, quote unquote, with cash, that it was highly unlikely that the deeper relationship that I was seeking and that I was in therapy to work on was ever going to materialize because he would have checked the box that was do something for Terri. You know what I mean? So that was interesting. And then in grad school, I did allow him to help me a little bit monthly because I was super broke. But at that point, I felt like it was okay. So I don't know. I guess we all have to make our own decisions about whether $200 a month is worth it if you feel like your independence is on the line, or if you feel like the manipulation, the covert and overt manipulation, is not worth it. And if you don't want to continue to do whatever is required to do. I have to say, with my father, it wasn't like he was trying to get his needs met by doing that. Well, I guess no, it's not true. His need was to not be more emotionally invested, right? He felt like that sort of took the place. At least, listen, he never told me that. That's just was my perception of how it felt. Anyway, long way around the barn to get back to money is complicated. So we know that is something to really look at. And I'm actually going to do another episode of the Terri Cole Show on your downloaded money blueprint, because a lot of you have been asking me about that. So you want to relate more healthily to money, have more abundance in your life. And a lot of times the unconscious stuff is really getting in the way. So I promise I will do another episode on that, a solo episode on that. Another form of manipulation is self-blame, but it's like fake, right? They're using feeling bad about themselves or saying, well, I'm an idiot, or I understand, to get you to forgive them, to get you to do something they want you to do. So be mindful of that. They know the buttons to push. If someone is successful at covert manipulation, they are very well schooled in human nature. So that is something to really look at, right? It's like this default position of the self-blaming. If they know that you are someone who feels guilty a lot, or if you're an empath, a highly sensitive person, and you don't want anyone to feel bad, especially someone in your life, they know how to just tap that button enough for you to be like, okay, it's not a big deal, I'll do the thing. So be mindful, because every time, when we're talking about a pattern of behavior, again, none of these things in an isolated way, and in the downloadable guide, I'm not going to go over all of them because then the episode would be too long, but in the downloadable guide, I'll do a more complete list. And there is a psychotherapist I really love. She's got a great list. Her name is Darlene Lancer, who I'm really digging her work. And she's got a great list, which I'll include in the downloadable guide. To get that, all you got to do is go to terricole.com/2 is the number of this episode. Anyway, moving into, why do we want to know this? Because really, so many of us do not know that we're being manipulated. You have the regular garden variety, passive-aggressive behavior as well, which also is a covert way of manipulating, using sarcasm, right? Instead of speaking directly, talking true, as I like to say. And that is something, but a lot of times we're aware of that. We can see that. It's clear to us that they're doing that. The other things now thinking about, what is it that they want to avoid? What is the manipulator's desire, whether they're doing it overtly or covertly? They want to avoid being confronted. They want to avoid putting you on the defensive. They want to make you doubt your perceptions, right? Going back to the gaslighting, to hide. They're masking their own aggressive intent in things. They don't want to take responsibility. They don't want things to change if they are getting their needs met this way. But it's exhausting, and it's really unfulfilling, because a lot of times clients would say, I know something's wrong, but I don't know what, right? I know something's wrong. Why am I so mad? Because what it does is, when we're being covertly manipulated, we're pissed because you can feel it inside, but you might not be able to name it. And the last thing I want to quickly hit is the blame, shame, guilt trifecta that manipulators use. We talked about blame at the top a little bit, but shaming as well. Oh, I didn't think you were that kind of a person. And then you're like, wait, what kind of a person are you saying I am? Am I that kind of a person? Right? So again, it can be done in these very these very small ways. Blame, shame, guilt. We want to really keep an eye out for what relationships in our lives produce these feelings most. So I will also give you a little inventory sheet, just some questions that you can ask to gain some clarity about who is in your life and how do you feel in those relationships. Because sometimes we can't name the behavior or the interaction, but we can almost always identify our own feelings if given powerful enough or direct enough questions. So I hope that you, we'll say, enjoyed this episode, but that this episode had added value to your life, because that's really what I'm most interested in doing. If you like it, share it on your social media platforms. Don't forget to download the little guide, because I went through all the trouble of making it for you. So I would love it if you would download it. I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of my crew. I super appreciate you all the time, not just today, but every day. So to get the guide, go to terricole.com/282. And as always, take care of you.